Sana from Discord and Louis-Victor Tremont, Louis-Victor de Tremont, Louis-Victor de Frasson from Tremont to talk a little bit about how to stay safe in gaming and transparency. So I will leave it up to you two. Enjoy the conversation.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Great to be with you here, Mauro, on this conversation. And maybe you can start by quickly introducing yourself, introducing your role at Discord.
Sounds great. Does it work? Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. So my name is Mauro. I lead Discord's public policy work in Europe. So this means that I spend my time engaging with policymakers, regulators, other companies, and civil society. Super excited to be here with Louis-Victor, and I hope this is going to be helpful for you.
Thanks a lot. And just a word about myself, Louis-Victor. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tremont. Tremont is a trust and safety service provider helping companies comply with the Digital Services Act, the Online Safety Act in the UK, and a lot of other fast-coming regulations worldwide. But as we start off this discussion, Mauro, maybe you can speak a bit about how you approach content moderation at Discord. What are some of the key aspects you look at and some of the elements that you really think about when you build out these processes and policies?
Yeah, maybe even before diving into content moderation, I can say a few words about Discord. Maybe I always like to do this experiment. How many people here, like if you can raise your hand, how many people, how many of you use Discord kind of on a regular basis? Oh wow, that's really a lot. Good. Okay, so then I don't have to explain all of it, but still I give you a little bit of an overview for those who don't use it. So Discord is a voice, video, and chat platform, mainly for gamers, people who play games online to hang out and spend time with their friends. You can communicate in many different ways on Discord, so be it one-on-one text messages, group direct messages, in servers, which are these online spaces that we have on Discord. You can do voice chat, video, stream content, upload content. And you can also now play some games with your friends and kind of have fun with them in this way. So there's really a lot of different ways that people interact on Discord. It's totally cross-platform, so you can access it on desktop, you can access it on mobile, on console even, so on PlayStation and Xbox, and it's very helpful for people who play games because it then enables cross-platform play. We have 200 million monthly active users around the world, and most of them, they play games on Discord. This is something that they enjoy and they find value in. I always like to explain, how we're different from other social media platforms. So there's no news feed on Discord. The focus is really on real-time interaction with your friends, and users, they have control on who they're talking to, which spaces they're joining, and the experience that they're having. Maybe I can say a few words about content moderation and how we think about it. We think about it in a holistic way, and we like to think about it on 3 different levers. The first one is user controls. So this is all the work that we do to make sure that users have detailed settings, that they have control over who they're interacting with, which spaces they're joining. And it's important to give them control over their experience. The second level, let's say, is the platform moderation. So this is composed of our community guidelines, which are all the rules of the behavior that's allowed and disallowed on Discord. And then, of course, all the work that we do to enforce the content moderation. And then the final point, which is something that distinguishes us from other platforms out there, is community moderation. So each community, they have the ability to kind of go beyond Discord's community guidelines and create rules for their own space and enforce them. I think I can stop here.
Thanks, but that's extremely interesting, I think, especially as we start seeing a number of other services also taking a multi-server approach. It's really interesting to see how community and how you can use the community to try and moderate some of the servers or some of the instances of Discord. And can you zoom in and explain a bit more how you empower the users to do this community moderation?
Yeah, sure. So this is something we're very passionate about. So maybe also to clear a common misconception. So Discord is not a decentralized platform, right? So this means our community guidelines, they are kind of our universal rules. They cover every interaction and every space on Discord. But then, as I was telling you before, so each community, they can go beyond. And usually the way it works is that so each community will have an administrator and then volunteer moderators, and they can define some specific rules. This can go from a server where people want to talk about cats, and one of the rules might be that no talk about dogs is allowed. We've seen servers where people are studying languages, and so, for example, one of the rules might be that in a specific, let's imagine a server to learn Swedish. So in a specific channel, only Swedish is allowed, and that would be a rule to make sure that people can learn the language. Or another example that I really like, so this server in Germany, it's a female-led community for women who like to play video games online. And so there the rule is only women allowed in this server. And this helps them have a safe space, a cozy space for them. They have game nights, they have a magazine that they share regularly. And this is all enabled by rules that they can enforce themselves. Also, one important thing to say, so we like to give users tools to enforce these rules. And so as a community moderator or administrator, they have a series of controls to understand what's going on in the server, and also tools to make their lives easier when they moderate their server. So an example is what we call automod, so which stands for auto moderation. This is a cool tool that includes various keyword filters. And so a server moderator, they can set it up with certain words, and then each time that a specific word is written, they will either, so the word can be blocked or the community moderator can receive an alert. And so really important, as you can imagine, for example, a slur, or making sure that you can keep your community safe and positive.
Thanks for those. That raises a lot of very interesting questions around transparency as well, and how do you consider and how do you count those elements that are being moderated by the community within the DSA, for example, transparency framework? How do you moderate? How do you keep track of those? How do you send a statement of reasons when it's a community moderation?
Yeah, I can share maybe some words on how we think about, how we make sure that users understand what's happening to their account. And so this is work that we've been doing already before the DSA, but then the Digital Services Act was let's say a good opportunity to continue that kind of work that we've been doing. And transparency, so making sure that users really understand what's happening to their account is really important, because there's no trust without transparency. But it's also very difficult. You want to make it in a way that's understandable by our user base and that's not overwhelming. So there actually we developed a hub that we call system warnings. So with the warning system, users, they have an in-app hub where they can see their account standing. So very concretely, what this means is that they will see you know, whether their account is all good, and they will have a little kind of green icon, and this shows that there were no violations of community guidelines and that there are no restrictions. And then, you know, if a user is violating community guidelines of Discord, this can change. So the account can be restricted, severely restricted, to permanently banned for the most egregious and serious violations of our community guidelines. And there we will give information on which community guideline was violated, which kind of restrictions are placed on the account, and then also until when these restrictions are placed. So very important for our users to understand what's happening to their account.
Thanks. And around the DSA compliance, we've seen, and we at Tremo have been working with a number of companies trying to help them understand the impact of the new regulation on the content moderation process, but also for VLOPs on, you know, actually doing the risk assessments, understanding, and I know Discord is not a VLOP yet. Who knows if you continue to grow in Europe, but you're not a VLOP. What for you was the most challenging part, do you think, of implementing the online platform obligations? Where did you struggle the most, and what could you potentially learn to other platforms or teach to other platforms here in the room that are going through this process?
Yeah, so so we, you know, doing the compliance for the DSA, we did all the transparency work I told you about. This goes quite beyond that, of course. So, you know, it goes from having a dedicated reporting system to an appeal system for our users. We had to change the way that we work with the trusted flaggers, dedicated system for law enforcement. So I guess, you know, what I want to stress is that this was quite, you know, we worked hard and we tried to be very thoughtful on our approach. And it was a specific challenge for Discord as a mid-sized company. So we have 800 employees around the world. The most difficult, I think the biggest challenge for, I think potentially for every company, but specifically for companies at our size, is the regulatory fragmentation at the international level that we're observing. So we see that many jurisdictions, they are legislating online safety, and it's a great thing. It's a worthy objective and totally in line with our principles. But this poses definitely a challenge because different laws that have similar objectives, then they will have slightly different, maybe reporting requirements, notice and action rules. And so this can be, of course, a challenge for us, you know, because we have to build kind of specific systems and processes. So there, our lesson learned has been to ensure communication with the various regulators around the world, and trying as much as possible to share information about our experiences and encourage them as well to talk to each other and to align as much as possible. That's something we hope can be done, and this can help us build the content moderation tools that we've been working hard on.
Indeed, we know that the devil's in the details, right? And it's one thing to speak about statements of reason, and it's another to build the API that actually enables you to send them to the European database with all the different categories that are there today but might potentially change tomorrow. So you need to make sure that the system you built are flexible enough, and we've been assisting quite a few clients on this. It's been very interesting, but we know that that's going to be potentially even more challenging in the future. And then who knows, maybe the UK will develop its own database one day, and I'm looking at Ofcom here, but I don't think it's the plan as of now. But you know, this could be replicated and create more, as you were saying, challenges for companies as this regulatory regimes worldwide continue to change.
Is it something you're seeing, you know, a lot of concerns from your clients, or some challenges also on your end?
Well, I mean, as you said, if a company the size of Discord has had significant challenges to comply and to operationalize all these obligations, you can imagine that a company of 50, 60, or 100 is even more challenged because they need to face the same type, of obligations with 10 times less resources to implement them. And the scale at which this needs to be done, these moderations needs to be done, the new systems, and I think even more beyond the process themselves and beyond the tooling that you need to put in place. I think the shift in paradigm where actually content moderation or trust and safety becomes a discipline in and by itself, where a lot of the times in a lot of companies, there was a mix between customer support and content moderation, and that potentially needs to be rethought of how you're going to, especially how you're going to operationalize or how you're going to reorganize your company internally, just for the transparency reports, right? If you have one system in which you mingle customer support and trust and content moderation data, then when you need to do the transparency report at the end of the year, and then you're going to need to do one for this and that jurisdiction, then all of that is going to become extremely difficult to do. And so it now becomes a given that you will need specific trust and safety or content moderation tools in place, not just for the detection, but also for the entire process in order to operationalize that regulation. And again, we're speaking about DSA version 1. There's going to be a DSA version 2, most probably we don't know when, but at some point. There's Ofcom, there's the Online Safety Act in the UK, there's Australia, there's Canada, there's Singapore, there's, all around the world, these regulations are changing and are going to impact these operations of a company who by nature are global companies. Right? The very nature that they are on the internet, they are global companies and they operate across all these jurisdictions.
And also, yeah, if I can add, there's of course an impact. So the effort needed to ensure compliance with legislation and change the system. So for example, transparency reporting, it's really a cross-functional effort within the company. So it needs involvement going from the legal team to understand legislation. We have a product policy team so that each time that we're developing new features, they will think about risk mitigations. Platform policy team with developing the community guidelines, but then also engineering time, for example, to ensure that we're building the systems and that we are actually capturing the data that we have to report. So yeah, it's complex work stream for sure.
In fact, this is what I find the most fascinating in this change of paradigm that I was saying, is that we arrive at a moment where you need to have legal and engineering speaking together, but they don't usually speak or sometimes speak the same language. And so you have kind of this middle ground, but even with policy, and then there's kind of this notion of compliance. How do you operationalize all of this? And this becomes extremely interesting. I want to say we saw it in other industries before. I was working in finance and compliance in the financial sector for quite some years, and we saw the same elements. How do you get the lawyers and the business and the frontline business people to start speaking the same language, and the back office were more engineers to try and all speak the same language and operationalize some of the regulations there. So it's very interesting to see some of the analogies that you can see across industries. But at some point you mentioned around bringing controls or enabling your users to have control or more control on Discord. And one of the key aspects of the DSA is also around children protection, and I know Ofcom with the OSA even more so. How do you empower users or minors to be protected, or parents to help protect their children on your services?
Thanks for the question. That's an area where we've been doing a lot of work, and I'm very proud of the work that the team has done. A big part of content moderation is, of course, detecting and then removing or actioning content, and that's absolutely necessary. But then if you actually want to have a system that works, you have to go beyond that. It's not simply about having draconian measures and directly removing all the content that's signaled to you. It's very much more nuanced than that. And because of that, so we've been working on a couple of tools that you were hinting at. The first one that I wanted to talk about is what we call Teen Safety Assist. And so this is a tool that we developed to protect minors specifically from inappropriate contact from an adult. We have a system that allows us to understand that a certain interaction might be potentially inappropriate. And so in that case, we will send an alert to the minor who's being contacted via direct messages. And the alert goes something like, you've been contacted by this person. Are you sure that you want to talk to them? If not, there's a red button to block the person. It's a bit of a nudge. And then there's another button to get kind of extra information. And the idea is to really empower the teenager and also give them a pause before they engage in that interaction. And then, another important aspect is to make sure that parents can also be enabled. So it's important to give autonomy and empower the teenagers, but it's also important to ensure that parents can be involved in the conversation. And for that, we developed what we call the Family Center. It's a tool that allows a parent or a guardian to connect with their child's Discord via QR code. And then the parent will get notifications about some aspects of the activity of the child. And there, the challenge for us was to develop a system that respects the privacy of the teen, but also, of course, that gives sufficient information to the parent to have conversations. And the approach we took was that, has been that the parent doesn't have access to the content of the conversations, but will have access to certain information. So, for example, with which other users has the teen engaged, communicated in the previous week, or in which servers, so these online spaces I was telling you about, so which servers did the teenager join last week. And the idea, it's that this is really a first spark to have a conversation between the parent and the child. We hope that, with these kind of systems, we can enable conversations. And once again, it's all part of a whole. So this only works because we also have the detection system, the transparency work that I was talking about. So it's a big one piece in the puzzle.
So we spoke a bit about some of the challenges and some of the work that Discord has done in order to comply to changing regulatory framework, some of the work that you've done to enable and to protect your users and your different communities, how you empower your users on Discord, and that's been extremely interesting. You said at the beginning, right, you have more than 200 million users worldwide. When you think about the scale in which you need to operate, trust and safety or content moderation, what are some of the key points you want to share around how you think about moderation at scale, and some of the key takeaways you could share with us?
Yeah, sure. So it's 200 million users. That's a huge
how many
number.
countries?
Virtually everywhere in the world. And we have 800 employees, right? So that's a big challenge, and we need to be able to do this kind of work really at scale. I think the first thing to share is making sure that we investing in our people. And so there, out of these 800 employees that we have, around 15% they are dedicated to safety. So this includes people working in policy, engineers, and then of course our trust and safety specialists. And we've done this investment also with acquisitions. So for example, our biggest acquisition to date has been the acquisition of Centropy, which was a machine learning AI content moderation company. So their founder is now our VP Trust and Safety, and this really enabled us to be very proactive when it comes to content moderation. And then what I can share is the kind of content moderation work that we do beyond the empowerment work that I was talking about. This starts with our community guidelines, which are developed by our platform policy team that describes what content and interactions are allowed and not allowed on the platform. And then we work hard on enforcing them. So we enforce them both in a proactive way, but also in a reactive way. Proactively, this includes various technologies and tools that we used. One tool in particular, it's a recent innovation that we had, is CLIP, so C-L-I-P. And so CLIP is a machine learning tool to detect unknown CSAM. And we actually made it open source through the Tech Coalition. So it's an experimental feature, but something that we're very positive about, and we're keen to see it, to use it more and more. Other tools, such as PhotoDNA, for example, to detect known CSAM. We also have tools that help us surface potentially bad spaces thanks to signals and behaviors. And these are really important to help us do this kind of work at scale. And then, of course, there's all the reactive work. So this is receiving reports from users, working with law enforcement, working with trusted flaggers, etc. So yeah, you need both to make this work. Yeah.
Thanks. And indeed, the scale in which you need to help and to protect users is huge. We see it as well with some of our clients and some of the different problematics that you start having, right? Because when you think about moderation, we usually think about some of the worst type of content, but then there's all the rest, and then there's the copyright, and then there's the trusted flaggers, of course, with the DSA, and then there's all these other topics that come on top. How do you manage to, within the queues, like within your moderation queues, how do you escalate? How do you go from one queue to another? How do you make sure that this is done in the way that's the most efficient as possible, and try to, at the same time, ultimately also reducing some of the costs of content moderation for a company?
Yeah, sure. So there's, we have certain specific teams that work on the more high harm kinds of content. These kind of, these teams, they will prioritize this kind of content. They will be able to do proactive investigations. And then I think another key aspect of it, and I'm curious to see in the next months and years how it will work out with the DSA, is also the collaboration with the trusted flaggers. So we had we call it a safety reporting network before, the DSA trusted flaggers, but so very important to help us manage huge volumes of content and prioritize in an efficient way.
And then there's also, when we speak about all these different actors, there's also the one which we hardly ever speak about, because they will come as the out-of-court dispute bodies. How we're going to start working and integrating them, and how they're going to be used by your users, right? Yeah. That's also going to be particularly interesting. Thank you very much. I think we're about time, so I just wanted to say.
Q&A? Or you don't want Q&A? That's all right. So I appreciate it. I'm sorry, I wasn't in the middle here. Appreciate the time. Thank you for the conversation. Please have it. I can't even speak anymore.